Well, folks, this is not the update that I wanted to go out there and bring to y'all today, but we kind of have to talk about it because this is not an April Fool's joke, folks. This is actually legit. Take a look at this tweet made by Mike McMahon of College Hockey Insider. Obviously, based off of the name, you know that he does primarily college hockey-based social media posts, and he went out there and tweeted this earlier this morning that Detroit Red Wings prospect Trey Augustine has informed the Wings that he will return to Michigan State for 2025-2026. Augustine was drafted in the second round by Detroit in 2023 and has been one of the top goaltenders in the NCAA the past 2 years. So, there you go, folks. That is the scoop here out of the Detroit Red Wings. Trey Augustine, who was just eliminated with Michigan State University in their NCAA tournament with a surprise loss against Cornell, will be sticking around with Michigan State one more year. Now, you can say that there's already enough that Augustine has accomplished in the NCAA, in the World Junior tournaments, that maybe another season in college isn't really all too necessary. But ultimately, if Augustine lives by his South Lyon, Michigan roots, he of course is playing for Michigan State University, there probably is a world where Augustine decides to sign with the Detroit Red Wings next year. If not, decides to go the full 4 years and then becomes a Wing at some point in 2027. But for now, just looking at the body of work that Augustine has had in the NCAA, last season as a freshman, he had a .915 save percentage in 35 games played. He went 23-9-2, which is a pretty good number, all things considered. Starting goalie, freshman guy, 18 years old, and he won a gold medal at the World Juniors, scoring a .936 save percentage and a .175 goals against average over there. Total dominance out of Trey Augustine as a rookie goaltender in the NCAA. But he decided to go back. He improved his numbers. This season he had a .924 save percentage and still 19-7-4 record. So a little bit worse of a record in terms of just the wins and the losses, but the save percentage and the GAA were both better. So he did have some sort of an improvement there. His numbers at the World Juniors did decline a little bit as well. He had a .917 save percentage versus the .929 he had last year, and a .252 goals against in 5 games. He did get lit up against the Germans, I believe it was. Was it the Germans? Yeah, it was. He had an .818 save percentage in that game against Team Germany. But he still won the gold medal. So I think all things considered, Trey Augustine is fine in that respect. But with the decision to go back to the NCAA, there's going to be no break for the World Juniors this time because he is 20 years old. He is no longer eligible to play at the World Junior Tournament. Augustine, heading back over for a junior season in the NCAA, is hopefully going to allow him to be one of the absolute pinnacle of goaltenders in the entire NCAA. This season, he was 14th overall in save percentage, tied for 12th, actually. So, still a ways to go before he ascends the mountain to the very pinnacle of NCAA goaltending, but he's still right in there as one of the top 20 guys. It's just in order to ascend the mountain, he's probably going to have to work on it a little bit more. It's kind of a shame because I do think that based off of Augustine's play this season and at the World Juniors, he probably would have been ready to play in the AHL, give Grand Rapids some sort of support, give Sebastian Cossa more of a challenge, or give Cossa the opportunity to get called up and play full-time with the Red Wings. If you wanted to think about the cycle of goaltenders as one guy comes in, another guy gets out, replacement system, then there is room for Cossa to maybe play in Detroit depending on Peter Mrazek's health and whether or not Cam Talbot is good to go too. But ultimately, this is a decision that the prospect is making for himself. He will be extending his time in the NCAA, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, just kind of disappointing considering he probably would have been okay in the AHL. Anyways, this is where we dive into some of the devil's advocate point of views, why this is a good thing. Here's a comment made on the R Red Wings subreddit by Scuba Stevie. Why is everyone bashing this? Number 1, OHL kids coming to the NCAA will make it more competitive and close to the same level of the AHL. They say 40% of kids going to the NCAA this year will be OHL kids. Number 2, he gets an education. Number 3, he isn't behind Kosa, Campbell, or Mrazek. He gets the starter's net with Michigan State. And number 4, he gets to build strength, play less games, but more meaningful games, and mature as a person and a player. Don't rush goalies. He isn't going to stop our defense from putting up abysmal stats and have his goals against average rise. And that is a really good way to look at it. There are a lot of things that can go well for Trey Augustine as a person, as a guy, with him staying in college. However, I do challenge the idea a little bit that the OHL players going over to the NCAA will make that league more so of like an AHL adjacent league. I do still think the AHL is a little bit more difficult, which is definitely why a lot of fans wanted to see Augustine take that next step. They wanted him to progress. They wanted him to take that forward, upward projection in his development there. It's not necessarily like he's being stagnant in the NCAA. There still is room for improvement, but OHL players heading over to the NCAA definitely will make things more difficult indeed. So it is going to be progression. Don't get me wrong. It's just I do think the AHL is a little bit higher up there. So ultimately, that's the update on Augustine. What I also wanted to do to end off this video was talk about one of the guys that the Wings have already on their system right now. This is all heading into today's game for the Wings against the St. Louis Blues. Hopefully the Wings pull out a 2 points there. I don't know, though, because the Blues have been really good as of late. But I wanted to turn your attention to this article published by Todd Matthews on octopusthrower.com, March 21st, 2025. 3 players entering their final month with the Wings. Let's talk about the guy who is on the cover of this piece, Patrick Kane. Matthews writes here that Kane isn't finished yet, but heading into his 37-year-old season, he'll be insistent on playing for either a top-ranked contender or the Chicago Blackhawks. Yeah, the Blackhawks, as who better to help oversee the team's transition phase than the former face of the franchise? It all depends if Kane wants to hoist the Stanley Cup one more time or help engage in a massive rebuilding project currently going on in the Windy City. Regardless, he doesn't fit into the Red Wings' future plans unless they want to keep blocking younger players and prospects. Regardless of where Kane ends up, he'll remain a productive player, ending up with somewhere between .75 and .8 points per game. Not a bad number, but not where he was. In Detroit's case, anyone moving up through the rankings may not hit that same mark immediately, but if this is truly the long game, then it makes logistical sense. So, I wanted to talk about this idea too. We don't need to spend too much time on it, it's why it's at the end of the video, but Patrick Kane leaving Detroit and heading back over to Chicago, of all places. That's interesting. Honestly, when you think about Connor Bedard and his skill set, one of the main reports that was going around during his draft-eligible season was that Connor Bedard kind of plays like a Patrick Kane, Austin Matthews hybrid. The skills and the size and the puck awareness of Patrick Kane and the shot ability of Austin Matthews. That's kind of the package that you're getting with Connor Bedard. So I'm kind of thinking here, if you have Connor Bedard and Patrick Kane playing together, would that not be perfect for Connor Bedard's development in order for him to take that next step and become a 90, 95, 100 point caliber player? It's no secret that when Patrick Kane was scoring all the points that he did, there were not that many points going around the NHL. Scoring was down when Patrick Kane was a 100-point Art Ross winner all those years ago. He was the only guy to have 100 points that season, I'm pretty sure. So Patrick Kane probably does have a thing or two to teach Connor Bedard in terms of how to shift around the zone and how to dangle out guys. Of course, though, because he was the face of the franchise for so long in Chicago, it's probably going to be like a homecoming hero's welcome back into that system. Obviously, there's a lot of fanfare that would exist in that transition. But ultimately, if Patrick Kane decides to leave Detroit and he ends up heading back over to Chicago to tear it up one more time with that sweater on, it would probably be like the natural progression of things, honestly. He's alright for Detroit. I think he's a pretty good player and I like what he brings. It's just, he's 36 years old. And I think at some point the Wings are going to have to make that transition into the younger guys. And Kane is one of the players that I think is holding back one of those spots. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below about Trey Augustine deciding to stick around in Michigan State University and not head over to Detroit. And what are your thoughts on Patrick Kane potentially sticking around in Chicago and leaving Detroit himself? What are your thoughts about these ideas? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this British Astros 9. And bye.